Okay, ladies and gentlemen, am I live? Let me know if you can hear me, because we might have had a copyright issue with the music. You know, that's why I sort of rage quit last stream, because of YouTube's new copyright policies in their streams. But let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if we are live. Is there anybody out there in this cold universe? Well, boom. Where's chat? There's chat. Yep, okay, we're good. Excellent. Excellent, as I say. Can I put that there? Hello, everyone. I can hear you. Excellent. Okay, so I am streaming at 10 o'clock p.m., which is interesting. I would do that normally if it wasn't in the fact that I lived in a small apartment. So I have no idea if my neighbor can hear me, which if she can, oops. But you know, Commander Radix must go on. Roger, Roger. What time is it where you're at, Ultronx? Because that doesn't seem right. Time in Seattle. Ooh, 5:01 a.m. What are you doing, Ultra? I didn't expect you to be awake. It's a nice chill 10 p.m. here in Japan land. Waking up the entire apartment complex with my live streaming. But you know what? If this goes well, if we have like a sizable audience who can show up at this time, streaming at night might be better for me. My night might be better for me than, you know, having to stream at like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. So it really depends on people who show up here today. It's 7 a.m. where I am at. Oh, where's that? Where is it 7 a.m.? I know the East Coast of the U.S. is 8 a.m. But I thought if you go any oh, you must be in that like weird time zone. East Coast and Pacific Standard Time are the only real time zones in America. You can't just respond to, why are you awake at 5 a.m. with sunglasses? That's not an appropriate response. I got a nice cup of hot chocolate. That's hot. That's hot. Someone put Will Smith in the chat. That's hot. Okay, so who am I? That's not the question we're supposed to be asking. Let me get the music. Lo-fi. Since this is what I always resort to. That might be a bit too loud. Let's go with that. I'm Central Time. Ah, that doesn't sound like a real time zone. But let me get to the point of what we're doing today. As you can see in the title and in the description, we're going to pitch and hypothetically create, you know, obviously we're not an animation studio, we can't actually make it, but we're going to write up on paper as a community, we're going to try to make a Transformers show. I was bit by a radioactive vampire. Nice. Oh, that's hot. That's hot. That's hot. So we're gonna make a Transformers show. Now, Transformers start off as a toy line, then comics, then shows. Although I think the shows have sort of become the more popular stuff, if not the movies actually. But you know, I enjoy myself a Transformers show time to time, but I feel like with some of the more recent Transformers TV shows, they haven't really been reaching to the full potential a Transformers story or continuity or universe could have. So I'm like, what if I just work with my community we got here in the Commander Radix sphere, and let's just make a show. So let me show you what I have in mind. I have a document here we're gonna fill out. Bam. Video capture device. Let me bring myself here. And let me bring chat here. I've been watching a lot of Transformers stop-motion series lately. Ah, then you'll have some inspiration floating around for this then. So we're gonna think of a title for this series, and it's in this hypothetical... Okay, basically this is what's happening. We are now... You're not in your universe anymore. Bam, we're now in an alternate universe where I am a creative director at Hasbro Entertainment, and I'm put in charge of putting together a Transformers show. And you, all in the audience, are various writers and screenwriters, storyboarders, creative directors who want to, like, you know, pitch to me your idea for a show, and we're going to figure out what this new Transformers show is going to be, and we're going to figure out what happens in each episode. So I'll have you guys' names as creative directors and writers. We're going to figure out what characters we're going to have. We're going to figure out the title, and then we're going to go try to see what we want to do for episodes. And we have been slated... Hasbro has given us a year-long show, a 52-episode series. One new episode per week. Basically, like a lot of this is basically the Unicron trilogy days, where Hasbro is starting off completely new with Transformers. They want a completely new thing. They're doing it by year series, 52 episodes, and basically we are recreating the Transformers brand into a brand new series. Here are my only requirements for this series. My only requirements, let's do guidelines/requirements is, at least at the beginning, the series must be set on Earth. 2, it has to be Autobots versus Decepticons, and they are led by Optimus Prime and Megatron. And finally, at least one human character. Oh, and another thing, as a creative director, I want to see something done in the Transformers shows I haven't seen done lately in the more recent Transformers shows, and that is a changing status quo and stakes. And what I mean by that is, if our series starts off in a junkyard somewhere, the last episode can't be in a junkyard. And in fact, the middle episode probably should be set somewhere other than the junkyard, but also at a different location than where the final episodes are set. Think of how, in the Unicron trilogy, and a lot of this is sort of based on the Unicron trilogy, how, you know, you can look at the beginning, middle, and end of Armada, or Energon, or Cybertron, and see that things have changed over the course of the series. By stakes, I mean that characters can die. Now you might be saying, Radix, characters have died in Cyberverse, characters have died in Prime and stuff like that. The characters that died in Cyberverse, which right now I can only think of Blur, were like one-shot episodes of this character shows up and then they die. Or if in stuff like Prime, it's more of characters dying, like... It's always the Decepticons, no Autobots really die, except for Cliffjumper, who dies in the first episode, so that doesn't really count. You know, it's not like you got attached to this character as a main character. Now, compared to the Unicron trilogy, where characters are dying on all sides throughout the entire series, that's something I want to have. I want to have stakes. I want to have you, like... Every time you go into an episode, you won't consider, oh, all the Autobots are going to live through this one. So we got to have a little bit of stakes. So a changing status quo, stakes in the fact that characters can die, and not just side characters, and not just Decepticons. At least in the beginning, the series must be set on Earth. It will be Autobots versus Decepticons, led by Optimus Prime and Megatron, and we can decide what other characters we want to add when we get to the character section. At least one human character. As a creative director working at Hasbro right now, I'm telling you, we have to have a human character to be relatable to the kids. That's all we know. Some of you might be looking at that and say, oh no, why do we have to have a human character? You don't like human characters because they've been written poorly. now that you're the creative writers, now that you're the creative directors and the writers for these episodes, you can sort of build an arc with this human character, and at least one human character, if you want to have a smaller group of human characters. But you get to decide what to do with them. Is this human character even a kid? That's a good question. It could be, a military person. It could be a politician. It could be a criminal who is trying to reform themselves. It could be a character that's sort of a human foil to one of the Cybertronians. It's whatever we decide in this stream. Changing status quo and stakes. Okay, let me take a look at the chat. You think Hasbro should do a Transformers series based on the 2005 IDW comics? No. Is this the Walking Dead of Transformers shows? It could be. Funny thing, I'm in the process of writing a Transformers show based on the Darn It Misclicked, from an open field to a military base to space. Okay, as we piece this together, where do we want to start? Let's just think broad strokes first. At the very heart, what do we want this Transformers series to be? If someone were to say, what's that Transformers series about? What's Untitled Transformers 2021 to 2022 cartoon about? And you only have to say it very quickly. It's about da-da-da-da-da. Okay, I see. Just a very broad stroke, so we get an idea of what we're getting into. How about a reboot of the original 1984 cartoon, but 3D, with a much different direction and a tone more like Transformers Prime? That's an idea. Anywho, the process of writing a TF show based on the IDW and Japanese G1 continuities, rewritten to change the characters but keeping their core beliefs. Hi there, should be an unknown character like Jackpot or Rad. Okay. So, as for the overall thing, how about a reboot of the original 1984 cartoon, but 3D with a much different style and tone, more like Transformers Prime? So what makes this a reboot of... By definition, every Transformers series is a reboot of Generation 1. That's how Transformers works. So we need to be a little bit more specific. But we want to have a tone more like Transformers Prime. I can get behind that. But what is this show about? Any ideas? Any takers? Before we get to things like characters and stuff like that. The culmination of all the great aspects of all the best animated Transformers series we've had so far by one cohesive story that actually works. So you basically mean Transformers the aligned continuity, but if the creative directors worked more cohesive with each other. The origins of Megatron from being a miner to gladiator to ruler of Kaon, the style of a gladiator show. Well, keep in mind that at the beginning of the series it has to be set on Earth and Autobots versus Decepticons, with at least one human character. So that might be a... looking into Megatron's origin might be an episode idea. Looking into Megatron's origin... Oh, did it get deleted? Oh, GG. But that might be an episode idea to later on in the series, or maybe a multi-part episode, or maybe feed it throughout the series through flashbacks. A Transformers romantic comedy. Okay, Ultra. I mean, maybe if we're up to that. But we still need to answer the question of what is this show about? I don't know why I'm doing this. There's no more hot chocolate in here. What I'm looking for is Transformers Armada, if you were to say what it would be about. It's about trying to get the Minicons, but it's really a setup by Unicron, and then there's a battle with Unicron at the end. Transformers Energon, what is it about? It's about living in a post-Transformers, in a post Autobot versus Decepticon world, but a piece is thrown into the mix by a third faction and a fight to revive Unicron. Transformers Cybertron is about a black hole that's destroying space. The Autobots have to gather the Cyber Planet keys before the Decepticons. Stuff like that. Oh well, a lot of messages popped up. It would have a similar style to G1 with similar designs, and it would be kind of so like the original cartoon and having all the characters there, but it would have to take it serious. Okay, I see what you're saying, but that's not what a show is about. You're sort of describing like motifs, sort of describing a mood, a feel, but that's not describing what it's about. Okay, here we have something. Cybertron is left in ruins due to everlasting war between two factions, the Autobots who fight for freedom, peace, and justice, and the Decepticons who wanted power for peace through tyranny. Okay, that's a premise. That's a premise. That's what all Transformers shows are pretty much built on. What is the show about, though, beyond that? A post-war and the Autobots lost. That's an interesting idea. We can have... Let me... plot ideas set in a universe where... It wouldn't necessarily be post-war, because we still have Autobots fighting Decepticons on Earth. But these Autobots could be Autobots having fled from Cybertron after the Decepticons have taken over, and the Autobots are sort of fighting as a resistance. Maybe the Decepticons sent forces to Earth. Maybe the Autobots are hiding on Earth, as a resistance group, and the Decepticons are dispatching forces over there. They're looking for where is Optimus Prime, and then they get word Optimus Prime's on Earth, and Megatron comes. That could be a good setup, where the Autobots have lost. I might go with that one. Let's see what else we have. And it would eventually lead to the Autobots and Decepticons teaming up to stop Unicron. So let's keep Unicron in the back of our minds. We might want to go to that as the finale. I based the characters somewhat on Budiansky's and Shooter's bios. Well, that's talking about characters. We want to talk about the story right now. What is this about? They are fighting to find an artifact that will affect the cosmos. Okay, so do we want to do another artifact quest? Another artifact that for the cosmos. The actual war on Cybertron, well, again, at the beginning at least, it has to be set on Earth. Guten Moore. Because of the war of Cybertron has shut down, but there is a way to hasten the process of the planet's restoration, so an Autobot strike team searches for it. However, the Decepticons learn of this. Because of this war, Cybertron has shut down, but there is a way to hasten the process of the planet's restoration, and so the Autobot strike team searches for it. However, the Decepticons learn of this. Also wasn't finished. Okay, what about a show about the Wreckers? Well, again, these are our requirements. At the beginning, the series must be set on Earth, Autobots versus Decepticons led by Optimus Prime and Megatron, with at least one human character. So we could maybe, if it fits the tone or mood or the direction of the show, maybe have some multi-parters or an episode one-shot focusing on the Wreckers, but not a whole show focusing on them specifically. I would make it about the war, like the grittiness of the war. Atrocities and war crimes have been committed by both factions, and the goal is to keep the good and evil for both factions. That's a theme. That's not what a show is about. That's a theme, but that's a good theme. Relationship between Unicron and Primus, and the humans caught up in the middle. Yeah, humans caught up in the middle of all the war crimes. Relationship between Unicron and Primus might be an idea, although that's been heavily explored with the Unicron trilogy. Okay. Oh, that's not a theme. That's a plot idea. Okay, so far we got, and I think we can cut it off here. We've been going on this for a little bit. So, which sounds good? A universe where the Autobots have lost, because of this war, Cybertron has shut down. There is a way to hasten the process of the planet's restoration, and so an Autobot strike team searches for it. But the Decepticons learn of this. Cybertron shut down. There is a way to hasten the process of the planet's restoration, so the Autobot strike team searches for it. However, the Decepticons learn of this. I will say that I'm not necessarily a fan of Optimus Prime being at the head of a strike team when Prime is the head of, or generally speaking, I don't know if things are different in this continuity we're making, but generally speaking, Prime is the head of an entire segment of Cybertron, a whole army, commander-in-chief. Him being in charge of one specific strike team that, isn't any more special than any other unit, I feel a bit off. I do think the idea of Optimus Prime sort of hiding on Earth with his Autobot forces, and the Decepticons discovering that and bringing Megatron, because this has to be set on Earth at the beginning, but we need to have a reason for Optimus Prime and Megatron, commanders of large armies, being on Earth. And I think the idea of hiding as sort of hiding in exile, trying to set up a resistance on Earth, might be a better idea to go down. A religious character, again, we're not at that point yet. I would say both sides are public and humans rush to join sides, with entire nations getting involved, a war on Earth on a global level. The show can build up to that. But here's the thing, guys. I'm trying to set up, if this stream goes well and we have enough, if this stream is well received and we have enough interaction with chat, I kind of want to do more streams like this to sort of build up a Transformers animated universe, where basically, this is basically season 1. The 52 episodes, 1 year, and then we'll do and then if this stream does well, we'll do 2 more, to set up a trilogy. And then beyond that, we can set up, and this is a spin-off Netflix series that's 13 episodes, and this is a comic tie-in, and we can build the universe from there on. But at first, I want to start with a simple, well-written, focused Transformers series. And I want to see if we can build that. So a large-scale war from the get-go on Earth, with nations involved, I don't think is a good way to start building something, but yeah. What if they're stuck on Earth and trying to find a way to return to Cybertron? The Decepticons pursue the Autobots in their battle in space, concludes with the shuttle's class, and the Autobots shuttle lands on Earth, while the Decepticons land on the moon. The bots and cons a simple story similar to G1, building up to a big event. Also, I love this stream. Thank you very much. Not done, lol. I'll be honest, Jay Watchcraft, the more you add, the less I like it. But, it's supposed to be just a simple, it's about ba-da-ba-da-ba. You're giving me a whole run-through, and that's not what we're at right now. I was just thinking of making a TF anime. Autobots hunt Unicron, and Decepticons use him. Okay, so, looking at these ideas presented to me by this story group, our general start... What's the actual word for it? It's not a blurb. Let's do brief description. This is what we're gonna go with. This Transformers show is set in a universe where the Autobots have lost the war for Cybertron. Optimus Prime and a group of Autobots flee the planet as it falls to the Decepticons. They make, let's say, what we want. They want to set up a resistance, set up a base of operations for resistance. What's the right term for it? A resistance cell? Because Earth isn't part of the Decepticon Empire, a government in exile. They set up an exile resistance. They set up a headquarters, a resistance headquarters in exile on Earth. Eventually, the Decepticons are on the... And also, after this stream, if this stream goes well and we do build up sort of a universe of these ideas of a Transformers universe, I would heavily encourage people actually writing fanfics to We're just going to write brief descriptions of what happens in the episodes, but I would strongly encourage people to like actually write out full episodes. That would be interesting to look at. The Decepticons are on the hunt for the escaped Autobot leader. Eventually discover that he is on Earth. Megatron himself leads the Decepticons to Earth, where our story takes place. Okay, what if Overlord was the first what if Overlord was the first season's underlying villain, pulling the strings and deceiving both sides in hopes to rule Cybertron? That's an idea we can have. How about the Autobots and Decepticons here about possible protoforms on Earth, eventually other worlds, and fight to replenish the ranks, but reformers on Maximals and Preds. I don't want to get into Maximals and Predacons just yet in this series. Alright, so in the aftermath of the final battle-type scenario, Prime is injured and the Autobots retreat to Earth. The cons spread scouts throughout the galaxy and small group discovers Autobots. Yeah, Overlord, a triple changer. Because of the loss of the Autobots scatter, meaning the first season could be about rebuilding the faction. That's an idea. We skirmish the Autobots, damage the cons. This is getting way too specific. Overlord isn't it? Autobots trying to meet. Okay. So our questions going in that we need to answer about this plot idea before episode 2 is, who is our human character or characters? And how do they fit into this? So that's the question on the table now. Who is our human character or characters? And how do they fit into all of this? How do they discover this Autobot? How do how do these characters or character discover this conflict and get involved? That is the question. I'm gonna get some water real quick. Would the show start off with one episode or a mini-series? I think you mean a multi-parter. And that's a good question. What do we want to do? A first episode? Like just one pilot and then it goes from there? Or a sort of multi-parter? Which I'm leaning towards multi-parter idea. Like either a 2 or a 3-parter. Either 2 or 3-parter. But we do need to answer the human. Once we understand the players in this, then we can like bring together the pieces and like figure out the pilot. And then we'll get into the characters, and then we'll think more of the stuff like if we're going to have Overlord being the underlying villain behind either the entire series or the first segment of the series. But first, the human. The idea could be that the human character be very interested in the solar system and discovers Autobots through a late night of studying the stars. That's an idea. A human named Dave who lives alone buys a car who turns out to be a Decepticon. That sounds a bit too derivative from the Michael Bay films, just inversed with the Decepticon. Autobot ship, aka the Arch. Crashed on Earth years ago. The mountain turned into a mining shaft that's abandoned. Some kids sneak in and then delete it. Okay. So far, out of everything presented so far, I like the... Oh, let me add... Where is it? Creative directors and writer. Let's add J. Watchcraft. Green Decepticon, Mr. Fedora Film, Robert Holmes, Baron 47, Cyber Scythe, Nova Buster, Jab, Transformers, the Diamond Scout. Okay. Will we have a big cast with all characters or a small cast like Prime? That's something we'll have to figure out. But right now, let's focus on one thing, guys, and we need to figure out this human character. So far, I like Jay Launchcraft here. I think we can flesh that a little bit more. That's not a human character. Character idea, emphasis on idea. I'd have Bumblebee just be some random guy who followed the Autobots. A guy who has a good heart but a small size. Autobot spaceship crash on Earth until that's not a human. Some kid sneak in and discover the Autobots. Sounds a bit too much like Armada for my taste. So we're talking about like not like Bumblebee. Like Bumblebee's not like a transformer. Bumblebee here is like maybe a nickname to a human that sort of has what we would traditionally find to be the character Bumblebee's traits and personality, but as reinterpreted as a human character. I could see that. That sounds interesting. Would it be possible to fit Kelly from Red 2001 in the background of the show? Sure, yeah. Kelly from Red 2001 pops up in the background every now and then. It's not that hard to stick a character design cameo every now and then. At least a human. Okay, so... where is it? Characters... we can use the name Dave, although... I'm not sure how I feel about that name. Interested in the solar system and discovers the Autobots through late night studying the stars. You ever put in Kelly? It's harder to stick a transformer in a show than, just a human in a crowd shot. Another idea could be that during the Autobots scouting the perimeter of the fallen Autobot ship and stumble onto a ranger whose vehicle broke down and decides to help them from time to time. That's an idea. Obscure G1 characters popping up in the background. That really depends on... because right now we're set pretty much on Earth, and there's not going to be huge crowd shots, at least with our current plan of Cybertronians. Dave is also a woman. Maybe Kylie, the character, doesn't have to be male. That's true, the character doesn't have to be male. Why not have it be set in the 80s? Because we aren't necessarily trying to go for the nostalgia. We're reinventing Transformers for the newest generation of people. James Sumdeck instead of Spike, then Thorn? Oh, that's somehow worse. I'm a human character like a young Tony Stark without the money that helps the Autobots, and a young Doctor Doom-esque one helping the Decepticons. I think at this point we're focusing on fleshing out this temporary named Dave character. I think that's what we're going for. I don't mean that as an idea. I meant as a joke, sorry for caps. You could be studying to become an astronomer and could be trying to get into college. I like that, we're fleshing out that backstory. Or if the human character was a new interpretation of Sorry Sumdeck, we could go with something like that. I like the studying to become an astronomer and trying to get into college. That gives us a sort of age range of like a late high school age student, which I'm thinking of this series not necessarily being like aimed. The more recent Transformers series have been aimed at a very young demographic. I'm thinking of this series maybe being aimed a little bit higher, something that could be enjoyed by like the older fans, but you know, sort of maybe in the age group of late high school, of sort of high school level kids, you know. Dr. Arkaville is a scientist in his early days. Dr. Arkaville is a scientist. He befriends an Autobot and learns about robotics, but feels betrayed for some reason and forms... Okay, now we're getting a bit into much more than just character development, or the foundation of a character. Spark Witwicky. If I said Spike Witwicky was a bad name, what makes you think Spark Witwicky is going to be any weird Silas Sumdeck? We're just combining names here at this point. Just testing the waters. How do we feel about a human-robot romance? I'll save it for my fanfic. Either hate the idea or just laugh at it. The human is depressed. Sure, let's give him depression. Depressed. You know, maybe he feels like sort of separate from the main, he feels separate from society. He's a nerd who nobody really gets him, and so he finds himself and his, you know, he finds his inner peace by looking at the stars, and that's how he becomes an astronomer. And then maybe that's why he's so much more into going into this, you know, galactic war thing, because he doesn't really have that many ties with society and civilization. And, you know, this weird secret is safe with him, because he's like, this is where I belong. We could go somewhere with that. Not for kids to hear me on this Game of Thrones Transformers edition. You can say Game of Thrones anything. That's a very vague term. You know, Game of Thrones is just any sort of... Game of Thrones doesn't mean anything. The first human that is... Yeah, okay, I think we've really figured out this character. Still don't like the name Dave. Haley has a potential replacement name. Character could be female. I think I'm good with this being a female character. It's just the name thing. Haley, that just sounds so... Just a Strastono. That's not a last name. So it's like, I've been saying that this is exactly Hunter 09. This is just Hunter 09. But I don't think we have enough support for making this just another Hunter 09 in name. And you know, I don't necessarily want to reuse a main human character. Alright, fine. Her name is David. Her name is David. How about Gustavo? I think we're gonna stick with this being a female character. So let's try to think of better female names. Megatron brings a Warwood. Not a full sentence, and not relevant to the current discussion on figuring out the name of this person. Cassie. We'll go with Cassie. Isn't there a Cassie? Was Cassie in the Transformers stuff? I'm pretty sure we had a Cassie before, but I can... It's vague enough that I can take it. Cassie. Oh, the Animorph. I forgot about the Animorph. Alright, yeah, we'll go with Cassie. Cassie works. If we need to, we can attach a last name later, but Cassie. Cassie is a... What's the last grade? 12th grader? 12th grade high school. Oh, we'll be more vague with senior. Senior high school student who is an outsider in her area as an introvert, and I don't want to say like a nerd, as an introvert and a loner. She often feels disconnected with most of her social circles. She finds peace in being alone and looking at the stars. At the beginning of the series, she is trying to get into college to be an astronomer. Her hobbies include amateur astronomy, and it is during one late night while looking at the stars that she comes to eventually discover the Autobots. Astromina, that's not a human name. How about Commander Radix? Abigail, which is a redhead with anger problems, or Cassandra. No, there's Cassie. Animorphs is part of the multiverse. Yes, Animorphs is. Cassie Kruger, she's Scottish. Yes, Scottish. What nationality are you thinking? I'm thinking American. Because Transformers is an American franchise. I think we'll stick it with American. Dr. Arkaville is the head. You've already said that, haven't you? You already said most of this. Francesco could be the last name. Cassie Poindexter. O'Neill is the last. Cassie O'Neill. That might be something we could work with. As a temporary hold over O'Neill, this gives us the opportunity in any future continuation of this universe to introduce, oh, this is her older brother, Hunter. No, she's black but raised in Scotland. Okay, she was adopted. What character will she meet? She meets Cosmos. We have the character. All right. So, episode 1. I say we have the pilot story be a multi-parter. Episode 1 and 2, maybe 3. What do we think? Do we need a 2 or 3-parter for the intro? The intro would be establishing the war is lost, establishing the resistance cell, establishing the Decepticon discovery, the Decepticon arrival, Cassie finding the Autobots, and I don't know if she finds the Ark or whatever Autobot ship is coming to Earth. I don't know if it's like, say, some Autobots just happen to be flying a patrol after having already established themselves on Earth, and she like notices them, and she follows them to the base. But we need to establish how she discovers the Autobots, going over there, making contact with them. And then we need to establish, this isn't a plot with conflict until, we need to figure out what happens between the Autobots and the Decepticons that we need to explain why the Decepticons just don't launch a massive attack on Earth that's in public. We want to try to keep the robots in disguise element for a little bit, at least for a little bit. So we need to find a way to explain why the Decepticons aren't launching a full-scale assault. Although I'm also a fan of having the Autobot base being really out in the middle of nowhere. Optimus Prime probably wouldn't want to set up a resistance cell so close to any population centers, so maybe they're in sort of the desert, like in Nevada, like how Transformers Armada was. Or Armada was in Nebraska, but somewhere in the American West. Transformers Prime was in Nevada. And so maybe they do launch a full attack on the Autobot base. It's just nobody really sees it. Nobody really notices it because it's so far away from where anyone lives. And then how does that battle end? You know, has to end with like Decepticon defeat. And then the Decepticons have to choose to stay on Earth. How does that all go down? Three parts. Okay, we're going with three-parter. Cosmos isn't actually a bad idea. She likes looking in space. Hard to be fine. 3 parts. Okay, we got 3 parts. All right. It'd be fun if G.I. Joe appear. Okay. I have a plan for G.I. Joe, but I'll get into that later. But at the moment, we're focusing on Transformers. Basically, I want to have like a 1-episode throwaway, like just introducing G.I. Joe, but they're just sort of like, you know, the characters of the week for that episode. Just sort of establishing that they exist, but not really doing much with them. That might come for like their own 13-episode Netflix series or something. They are running low on Energon. Interaction with humans would cause chaos. They would have to use a lot of Energon, therefore they are in disguise. Well, we understand why the Autobots are in disguise. They don't want to be noticed by the Decepticons. They're in hiding. But we need to figure out why the Decepticons would. Episode 1 could be the backstory to the war and the evacuation of the Autobot faction, which leads to Optimus and his Autobots crash land on Earth. I don't think it would be really a crash on Earth. I think it'd be like a landing, a normal landing, because they're going to a planet to like evacuate, to like go into exile to. They don't have to crash. Can this be in Texas? It could be in Texas. Autobots could set up a few little bases around the desert with their bigger guys like Omega Supreme and Metroplex. The Decepticons don't want the humans to rise against them. Okay, so is it in character for the Decepticons to fear the humans? Yes, Nevada Desert. The Decepticons land in Chernobyl, Russia, and have no idea where the Autobots are there, using radiation in the area and trying to make Energon. Okay, they go on to find the Autobots. That's an idea. Helmet main characters are just a ragtag team of Autobots and Abyss Optimus showing up. Again, one of the requirements is to have Optimus and Megatron be main players in the series. Now, maybe in the pilot multi-parter, that could be the case, but also the whole point of this is that they're trying to find Optimus Prime, so Optimus Prime has to be there. Season 1 ends with him being revealed into the world. That could be a reveal that happens some point in the series. G.I. Joe could maybe a season 2 antagonist. G.I. Joe wouldn't be an antagonist. Can't Super Friends, RC, or Override. The Decepticons go directly to the Autobots most of the time, so they would usually be away from the humans. Yeah, so we have a lot of messages. Not really any of my questions answered. Let's see. Episode 1. And we'll figure out a title for this episode later, but basically explains the fall of Cybertron and the... Now, do we want to start off with the Transformers, or do we want to use Cassie as, at least in these first few episodes, to be the window for the viewer? You know, the introduction to Transformers. I think starting off with Cassie would be better. Like, she discovers the Autobots, and then the Autobots tell her what happened, and then through flashbacks you see what happened, rather than showing it right off the bat. What time period? It's set in 2021, I believe, because this is what it's set when it's aired, I should say. The combats would be on the Autobot trail escaping. You have Megatron and his Seekers and Scouts ahead of Megatron to search for the Autobots led by Starscream, and secondly by Ramjet. Okay, you're talking about all these characters, you're not explaining why they're there. Like, what's the value of Ramjet? You're just listing character names. looking for Prime. Episode 2 could be the establishing of a makeshift HQ, and the Decepticons have been ordered by Megatron to send several scouting parties. One is led by Starscream and his squad. I think that's moving a bit too slow. I think by episode 1, the Autobots should have established their base, and they have been on Earth for a little bit of time. At most, maybe 1 year. At least, like, a few months. So much death. What was the question? The Decepticons want the humans to be on their side. Why do they want the humans to be on their side? We need to start with Cassie, because I'm sure many of us can relate to her. Yes, Cassie has a window. Episode 1, First Contact. First Contact is an idea. TBA. Working title, First Contact. Working title, First Contact. So, introduces us to Cassie. While looking at the stars. We seem to really like the cosmos idea. So, let's go with, while looking at the stars, she observes cosmos in UFO form. Cosmos in UFO form. Do you want to say, like, Cosmos is doing, like, some sort of, scouting and stuff like that, just patrolling around the base, or something like that, and then she just happens to catch him. News Force doing some patrolling. She is intrigued and follows. This takes her to the Autobot headquarters. We can say it's the Ark. They make headquarters out of their ship. The Ark. The Autobots discover her. There's like a whole scene where like we're supposed to be secret, we're supposed to be in disguise, and this human who was apparently just looking up at like 3 a.m. in her telescope just happened to find us. Who would have known the weirdo in town is near where our base is. But then like they're like, we can't trust this human, but then she's like, I'm a loner, I don't really care about sharing this stuff with anyone, your secret's safe with me. And like, you know what, we like you, and you can be like, try to help us understand Earth a little bit. Put in G.I. Joe. I already said G.I. Joe is going to be an episode. Manipulate the humans. Okay, why would they want to manipulate the humans when they can do it themselves? Because these are the Decepticons who have taken over Cybertron. They've won the war. They don't need... There's no reason for the Decepticons to care about secrecy. So, but for the sake of the plot, we need to construct something as to why they would care about secrecy. Decepticons. So I like the Cosmos idea, but I think it'd be fitting if it was Ratchet and not to IDW. And he's a fan favorite. Put in G.I. Joe. The Cosmos went to Earth before the others to scout out, so he would know more about humanity than the others. They're just scouting out the location of the Autobots and try to see. Scout out the location of the Autobots. Trying to receive info by making contact with the Earth's military forces. There's really no reason for them to do that, though. The Autobots and a single Decepticon is supposed to... What was this? Decepticon ship. If that's the case... Okay, with this one, maybe during her studies, Cassie sees stars flickering, but it turns out to be an Autobot ship being attacked by a Decepticon ship. One, because of how this plays out, that Autobot ship would have to be like a single flyer or something like that, not like an actual like main ship, because the Ark would have been already settled down. I'm worried about giving enough time for like her to learn about I want to give her enough time to learn about the Decepticons, and then the Decepticons show up like to Earth. Like, they know the Autobots are on Earth, and Megatron like gets the Force to go to Earth. But we don't see that. We see Cassie learn about the Decepticons from the Autobots, and then like cut to a scene of the Decepticons arriving, and that could be like maybe the cliffhanger of part 1. Shatter, semi-Megatron discount for Autobot energy signature. G.I. Joe, Prime being for a Space Force. It would be an intergalactic council which has war policies, and everyone needs to follow, and at this moment in time, the Decepticons aren't powerful enough to go against that council. That's a good idea. I'll have that saved. That is a legitimate reasoning as to why the Decepticons would operate in secret. You know, let's say, you know, the Decepticons committed a lot of war crimes during the Autobot and Decepticon war, and now that they've taken over Cybertron, they're still weak from fighting this huge war. But they need to so because they're weak, they need to make themselves accountable to the intergalactic community. So like, you know, the United Nations of Space doesn't attack them and say you're a terrorist organization that just took over this political entity. They could, you know, say that now that we defeated the Autobots, you know, we're gonna be true to our word that we're actually the good guys, and we're not gonna commit war crimes. And the Intergalactic Council or whatever is like, okay, well, you killed a lot of people during that last war, so don't attack anyone else or else we'll have an intervention. And they're like, Prime is on Earth, crap, there are people there, we have to do this in secret. That's something I have never seen done before in Transformers, and I think that's a very good idea. Blast off of the Decepticons come and start with the Autobots. Where one of the rules is you can't have war on inhabited planets. I like this idea. Do I have you listed on? Hold on. BAV. We can have the Decepticons on Earth belong before the Autobots. The Autobots only came because of the Decepticons. That doesn't go with what the reason the Autobots came to Earth was to leave the Decepticons. So that doesn't really jive with what we have so far. If we be like Hasbro and don't explain why the cons disguise themselves. What's the point of this? Just curious since I was late to the stream. Just as an exercise in creativity. Or pretending to write a Transformer show, yeah. So I like the intergalactic community idea. Okay, so we have that answer. Autobots discover her. After some debate, the Autobots are convinced that Cassie won't reveal their secret, and she is allowed to socialize with the Autobots and stay on base as she wishes. The Autobots reveal the history of their world and why they are on Cybertron. They explain that they are hiding from the Decepticons. Cut to the arrival of the Decepticons, and let's just have them be on the Nemesis. On the Nemesis arriving at Earth. That would be our cliffhanger for episode 1. Episode 2, working title first, Contact Part 2. Then we have First Contact Part 3. The first in Transformers Infiltration comic. I'm very hesitant about like basing stuff completely off of stuff like that. Will there be the 13 primes? Let's focus on one thing at a time here, people. By the way, this pre-Shroud, this would be airing in 2021 to 22, so definitely post-Shroud. The Galactic Council should then be brought up as a small bit. Yes, they would bring up the Galactic, and we'll have it be the Galactic Council since that's an established thing in Transformers lore. They would bring that up. Episode 2 could start off focusing more on the Decepticons. Starts off more with the Decepticons. Introduce ourselves to those characters. Explain how how the Decepticons are in a position where they have to follow the rules of the Galactic Council, and how they need their operations on Earth to be in secret. How many Autobots are on Earth and the Decepticons? We will figure that out later. Could there be Autobot resistance cell in Cybertron fighting against the Decepticons and giving any info they can to Prime? We can establish that later on. Why they're on Cybertron instead of Earth? That's not a proper sentence. She learned about the Decepticons by Cup. Maybe. You could use stuff from the line novels. A small scoop of cons animated style to avoid suspicion. The thing is, we need enough soldiers to take on Optimus Prime and his resistance cell, so I would imagine the Decepticons might slightly outnumber the Autobots, since they're in the position of planning ahead, while the Autobots just sort of had to take what they could and leave. So the introduction of First Contact Part 2 would be more about the Decepticons. Episode 2 should set up the final of this arc conflict at First Contact Part 3. Reveal how the Decepticons knew the Autobots were on Earth. How do we want to figure out, like, did the Decepticons just send a scouting party and they just happened to find the Autobots? Did the Autobots not hide as well as they thought they did? Is there a spy within the Autobot ranks that's really a Decepticon? That could be something we haven't really seen before. That could be something new. What do you think about that? That there's really a secret spy. Maybe like later on in the series, they later reveal that it was an Autobot spy that gave them the information of where to find them, and then you'll have like a period of episodes where they're like the Autobots don't trust each other because they know one of them is a spy, but they don't know which, and like later on, it's ultimately revealed who the spy is or whatever. Nemesis should be Trypticon, and the arc should be no Mega Supreme. Why? No Vircons. Could we introduce a new Cybertron character later on, specifically one that turned into a Titanic? Maybe if it fits in the plot. Will there be combiners? Maybe if it fits in the plot, but we aren't focusing on that right now. So right now we're just focusing on the pilot multi-parter. The Autobot have a mole and make it seem like Mirage, but they don't have it be Mirage. Introduce Makeshift in Part 2. Spy will be Punch. Here's the thing, I don't want the spy character to be a character that's obviously a spy character. Like, Punch is obviously a spy character. Mirage, I'm okay with Mirage being used as a people think he's the spy, but then it's not actually the spy. But I want the viewer to be just as in the dark as the Autobots are as to who the spy really is. Could the mole be Getaway? No, because Getaway already has a history of selling out his fellow Autobots. We need a character that has never been... We need a character who we look at and think, that couldn't possibly be a spy, and then it is the spy. A character we like, maybe Ratchet, maybe Ironhide, maybe, one of those characters that an old fan of Transformers would never think of as being... Old fan of Transformers could never think of as a spy, and then the reveal's done later on. Should be one of those high stakes. That's true. They send 2 scouts in space, and one in space is acting like a team. The Autobot, again, like I said, well, as a red herring maybe, but spy should be Cliff Jumper. We have a collection of new characters, and one of them be a spy. Cliff Jumper. Okay, I'm seeing 2 people saying Cliff Jumper. Why would you say Cliff Jumper? What's your Jazz? I think Jazz might be it, because Cliff Jumpers has already been involved in like those sort of plots, not as a spy, but as a person accusing people of being a spy. And I want a character like completely removed from all of that. I want a character that hasn't been a spy before in Transformers fiction. I want a character who hasn't been accused of being a spy before in Transformers fiction, and I want a character who hasn't been someone so, like, you're a spy type character. And I want a completely separate character, because some people will be looking at that and say, Cliffjumper was so anti-spy in the previous shows, what if he's actually the show? I want someone completely separate. Wheeljack's an idea. Wheeljack and Jazz are definitely ideas. Will there be female Transformers? If so, will there be romance between Transformers? We'll figure that out after the pilot, dude. I don't know how many times I need to say that. We're focusing on one thing at a time. Focusing on the pilot. Once we get past the pilot, then we can start throwing out episode ideas. And like, oh, what if there's one where there's a combiner? Or, oh, what if there's one where there's like a Titanic type Transformer? Oh, what if there's one yada yada yada. Bumblebee could be the spy. I think Bumblebee's a little bit too high up. So you want Beachcomber. Warpath is a spy. Out of all these, I think I like Jazz the most as the spy, because it's a character enough to get people a character famous enough to get people talking about it. Like, oh, did you hear the reveal in the Transformers series that so and so was a spy? And like, he's also completely uninvolved. We'll do Jazz. Jazz is the spy. That's right. Jazz spy. Oh, intrigued. Bumblebee, Tailgate, Wheeljack, Jazz, Swerve, Chromia, Alpha, Bravo. Again, Jazz really is the best fitting of all those. So, Decepticons knew they were on Earth. There is a spy in the Autobot ranks. Now, the pilot multi-parter, we can reveal that the Decepticons knew that there was a... Or you know what? Let's have it be an open question as to... Open question as to how the Decepticons found the Autobots. And so the viewer will think, oh, the Decepticons just found them. They don't know how it happened specifically, but they're like, oh yeah, the Decepticons found the Autobots, you know, the show has to happen, so of course it happened. And then later on reveal that it was a spy, so that we can have a string of episodes where the Autobots don't trust each other, and then do the reveal. Don't do Kid Appeal characters. People could be suspicious of Punch, Drift, and Mirage as red herring. Jazz would be Shockwave, like that BotCon toy. I don't know what you're talking about. Jazz. In my videos, Jazz is evil. Smooth Jazz. I feel like Jazz wouldn't be a good choice because he's usually the one who links with human culture. That's what makes him the best question. That's what makes him the best character to choose. And maybe we can have it as time goes on Earth, he becomes attached to Earth culture, and by the time it may be like he out of guilt reveals that he was a spy, and then it's like, do we execute him? Do we, like, you know, some questions we could answer later on, but we'll get to that. Episode 2 needs to set up for the... Do we need... Do we want the Decepticons to find the Ark? No, because if there's a spy in the Autobot ranks, they should know where exactly they are. Like, there's no reason why the spy would say, the Autobots on Earth, and then they arrive on Earth, and like, we're on Earth, and the spy's like, oh, because they're there. So they have to find the Ark in this one. Okay. Let's see, where do we go from here? Jazz, the Autobot second in command, I think, which we don't really know in this series. What's his motive? We will work on that. It could be something about like how his town was destroyed during the war and he just wants it. Like maybe he was like one of those that like, you know, the war was so violent and then it ended with the Decepticon. And he was like, well, we lost, but I guess you could say at least the war's over. And then Optimus Prime is like, let's go continue the war by being out as exiled resistance people. And Jez is like, really? I just want this war to end type deal. But we'll figure that out as it goes. Shattered Glass episode. We could have a Shattered Glass episode. Cons would immediately attack the Ark. Small siege separating the Autobots. The thing with the spy idea, and the Decepticons will always know about... Yeah, they'll always know where the Autobots are. Yeah. Well, let's see. Starts off with more Decepticons, introduces them. What else happens in this episode? Because I want the main battle of the Ark happening here. The first Decepticon attack on the Ark happening in part 3. In fact, we can write first Decepticon attack on the Ark. The Autobots manage to defend themselves well enough to force the Decepticons into a retreat. The Decepticons settle down. We could use Chernobyl to lick their wounds and prepare for a new strategy. Because at the end of episode 3, we need to establish our new status quo. We can't have the attack on the Ark separate all the Autobots. This battle has to be an Autobot victory. Because the ending of episode 3 will be the status quo for the next few episodes, for the next few bit of the series. So we need, Autobots in their position, Decepticons in their position. The cons figure out a way to get around the Galactic Council before attacking, so that has to be part 2 episode. Oh, that's fair. They have to, the legal red tape. That might be something to do with. If there's a part 3, it's a big battlefield in the desert with Optimus. That would be what would happen, yeah. Could it be the Autobots had the first encounter with the Decepticons and segue to part 3? Yeah, but episode 2, we have our beginning, then we need the middle, and then we need the end. And the end would be the Decepticon arrival at Autobot HQ. But what happens in the middle is the question. Something like Warpath, we'll get with that after we deal with the pilot. We need to kill off a main bot right away. I think that's like the cliff jumper mistake that happened in Transformers. Well, it could set the tone. I guess my main criticism of Transformers Prime in that regard is they killed Cliffjumper off to set the tone, but then that wasn't the tone that was reflected through the remainder of the series. But if we're going to go with that, as high stakes if characters can die, we do need to set that up at the beginning. Or we could set that up. We don't necessarily need to. So as long as we follow through with that, like what Prime did. Yeah, we could kill someone off. Autobot dies during the battle. Jazz communication device be damaged, so... we can have Jazz's communication device be damaged so he can't communicate with the Decepticons, therefore they can only find what planet they're on and not where about. Well, Jazz would still have access to communication stuff in the Ark, would be the problem with that. For a brief period, a brief moment, that could work, but then Jazz would, let's say Jazz gets, his communication device shot. Okay, he has to get to base at some point. Get the Decepticons hide there in the ship in a lake to hide from Autobot sensors. Well, they're already in Chernobyl. I think the radiation from Chernobyl would wreak havoc with the Autobots trackers. Killed Jetfire's main flyer. No, not Jetfire. Autobots losing their main escape. Yes, we need to show these members we're not messing around. I think the Decepticon ship should be hidden in the sea. Kill Starscream. I don't think we should kill Starscream. No female Transformers till later on. We're not the question is what happens in the middle of episode 2. That's what we're trying to figure out here. Could the Autobot who dies be Scoop? It doesn't matter who dies just yet. But he'll be a ghost. We don't want Ghost Starscream immediately after episode 3. That's ridiculous. Maybe have something happens where the Autobots realize the Decepticons are there and then they arrive at the Ark and they start preparing. Something happens. Autobots realize the Decepticons have arrived. They start to prepare for a siege. So that's why the Autobots are able to handle the Decepticons. They have enough time to prepare. After Autobots have had time to prepare. Cassie could take the Autobots out on an exploration of the surroundings. The Decepticons scout their new locations. Yes. Cassie takes the Autobots out on exploration while Decepticons scout the planet. And maybe at some point during those two excursions, one Autobot happens to see one Decepticon or vice versa. And that's how the Autobots figure out that there's Decepticons. Autobots realize the Decepticons are on the planet. Episode 2, Cassie notices something wrong with Jazz as a red flag. I don't think we should do that early. Banter between the Autobots to show their relationship. Sure, yeah. Idea of them repairing rear deck and rear. The Ark's defenses would be just fine. They wouldn't. Again, they landed and prepared, and this is a functioning headquarters. The Ark didn't crash. Dinobots, Decepticon scouting parties, escape our beliefs. Yeah, something like that is good, yes. And then we have the main conflict, and then setting up the status quo. So we have our pilot down. So, along with our plot ideas, is Overlord being like an overarching villain who's pulling the strings and deceiving both sides in hopes of ruling Cybertron. We don't need this. And we have the Galactic Council subplot. We have our Galactic Council Jazz Spy subplot. And we have the Overlord subplot. And then we can throw in, we suggested Megatron's origins being a subplot, like something that could pop up later on. Okay. But I think maybe we introduce the Overlord issue, episode 4 or 5, after the pilot, but then the next few episodes, maybe up to 10, being more self-contained one-shots, something like that. Episodes all need to be like 45 minutes. I don't even think we have enough. I don't even think we actually really have enough in episode 2 or 3 to be a full, but, we're just writing out an outline anyway. So, give me your ideas for episodes, and maybe one that, sort of sets up this Overlord subplot. I'm going to use the bathroom real quick, but when I come back, we can set up these early episodes. Sorry. Didn't realize I was muted. Okay. Jackpot is a gambler, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's see. I said Optimus and Megatron being brothers was a bad idea. I read that, and that's an idea. I read that. No, I like this idea. I said I didn't like Jazz being Ricochet because that defeats the whole point of having it be Jazz and setting up how much... Because this isn't like an evil Jazz. This isn't a Jazz that's evil. This is a Jazz that's tired and has been through a long war that he does not want to see continue. This is a demoralized Jazz, but it's still Jazz. And I like the idea of the flashbacks and spotlights. So that Beast Wars, as far as we know, didn't happen. Episode 4, Megatron orders Shockwave to construct a protoform super soldier and is given the name Overlord. However, by the end of the episode, Overlord grows to despise Megatron's leadership. I'm not sure if I like the idea of Overlord being made at this point in time. Because think of it, the Decepticons have won the war. Surely there's going to be scheming with the generals that popped up that were having to fight in the war. Overlord, maybe based on Cybertron pulling some strings, might be. Having been a veteran of the war, and now that the war's over, feels like now is the time for him to take his place as leader. That might be something to play with. Read the Optimus origin a little bit. Jazz that's just conflicted by war. Sentinel Prime should be in flashbacks. Maybe. But if we're going to use beast modes, which we most likely are, we need to give a reason for it. Okay, so I saw... Where's the one with Jazz and Cliff Jumper? That's the one we can just slap somewhere. Okay. We can say episode 6 or 7. Cliff... title. Cliff... And we don't have to... The reason we went into so much detail here with the pilots, because it's the pilot where things are set up. For a lot of the one-shot episodes, we can just give a little 1-sentence or 2-sentence description. Cliff Jumper and Jazz go on a scouting mission where hidings ensue. Where are they hiding at? Where at some point the two are vulnerable, which cements their friendship and camaraderie. Maybe have Jazz say a few lines where it expresses that he's getting tired of the war. A few lines where Jazz says he's tired of the war. Maybe not like a full monologue, but just like him hiding behind a rock and there's a Decepticon out there and Jazz like, I'm just about through with having to hide behind all these places all the time. Just a line that could just be seen as a throwaway line, but once you rewatch the series, knowing that Jazz was the spy, it's like, oh, there were seeds planted. Oh boy, a lot of stuff. Death Source as a Decepticon warlord and plots to betray Megatron. That's a bit too similar to what we have with Overlord going on right now. How about Overlord is the current council member for the Decepticons on the Galactic Council? That's something we could go somewhere with. What if Perceptor and Beachcomber find this new alloy and try to retrieve it but are attacked by Decepticons? The Decepticons get the alloy. And Beachcomber loses his hand and gets a new one made from the last part of the alloy. So he has an invincible gold hand. Ah! Being like the first piece of Transformers media to reference the weird gold stuff, the Gold Lagoon, since the 80s. I actually kind of like that idea, just as a little throwaway episode. Besides Megatron, blah blah blah. The way this works is we don't necessarily need to like list our characters. We're making up a plot and then we figure out what characters we need for that. Just arbitrarily selecting characters that isn't really how you write a story. Episode 5 shows Overlord and Shockwave as rival governors on Cybertron, with Earth plot being about the race for Energon. Shockwave would be a serious man to Overlord's jokey side for the Cybertron half. I'm not sure Overlord's really that jokey. But I could like the idea of flashing back to, because the Decepticons have taken over Cybertron. Okay, how does that look like? And if we have a rivalry between like major generals like Shockwave and Overlord, but they also have governor level promotions, you sort of see this House of Cards type thing going on Cybertron. That would be something interesting. Let's do we want to do episode 5? That might be a bit early. Episode 6 gives us a look at Decepticon occupied Cybertron. Overlord and Shockwave are rival governors. Maybe because Shockwave's like more like static and loyal, while Overlord is like, don't you aspire to be something greater? Don't you think that our current level is like below us? This isn't the victory I wanted. I wanted to rule more. And Shockwave's like, I'm fine with what I have, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's have Overlord expresses higher ambitions, while Shockwave is generally pleased with his, or maybe content is the better word, generally content with his position. Maybe we can show that Shockwave has like turned his entire province or whatever into like just a massive like experimentation place where like normal Cybertronians are like experimented upon. Show that Shockwave's province has become basically a Holocaust camp, a large living experimentation camp. Jazz starts to feel regret, but not fully enough to change his morals by the end of the episode, maybe. And when Cliff Jumper's in danger or dies, it could change him completely. Or maybe they get helped out by some humans, or maybe as they're scouting. It starts off as a scouting mission where they're looking more deeper into human society, and Jazz starts to get more of an attachment to Earth. So that Jazz gets that attachment. But we have him save Cliff Jumper. Starts with scouting local society, where Jazz begins to like humans more. It's not to say that he ever disliked him, but he's beginning to like realize, hey, these people know how to get down. Saves Cliff Jumper at some point after they run into Decepticons, which would be the main plot of the story. Receptor and Cassie bond over their love for science. That's good. I don't know if that's enough for its own episode, but that's definitely a scene we can have somewhere. We can have it as a scene in episode 4. Cassie and Perceptor bond over their love of science. In fact, we could use episode 4 to explore some sort of scientific concept in Transformers, like a space bridge or something, or mass shifting, or any other of those concepts from Transformers lore. And that could be sort of a setup for a plot, like, someone accidentally becomes really small, and that's a little plot. Bumblebee becomes significantly smaller than usual. But episode 4, we want to sort of take as a breather from the pilot, but also still setting up a little bit more. It can't 100% be filler, but it is also, a chance to chill. Some Starscream interaction with Slipstream. Shockwave is more logical, and Decepticon ambassador to the... Oh yeah, we forget the ambassador to the council. I like Overlord being a governor a bit better, though. Because we want to have Overlord focused on the inner machinations of the Decepticons, making him essentially, he's more involved in domestic affairs with our plot thread we're weaving with him, and less of international ones. Shockwave could be the ambassador. Maybe. Two-parter and a couple main characters get killed and Optimus goes on a rampage. Maybe. Spike should be friend Cassie. Maybe we could introduce a Spike at some point. Could we have Punch go to Swerve's bar in the Ark and talk about all the stress of being a spy and the stuff he has to do? I don't want to have like too much spy stuff going on. We have one spy plot and that's about enough. We don't need to have Punch involved in this series. Cade Yeager could be in the show. That's a possibility. Episode 6 could be House of Cards. Oh, I like that. I like that. House of Cards. Do I have you listed on here? Scourge Prime Productions. Could be an episode about Swindle. That's more of a premise and not a story. Episode 9. Do I have something listed with episode 9? At the end, should have a collective council member arriving to inspect how the Decepticons are doing. Ah, yes. Well, I think the thing is they want to keep the Earth operations secret from the council, so the moment the council discovers that anything's going on Earth is game over. So we can't have that at least so early into the series. Maybe an episode focusing on like the administration on Cybertron trying to keep the council from realizing that the Decepticons are doing anything on Earth. Like they go like, "Where's Megatron?" It's like, you don't need to know where Megatron is. Where Perceptor and Shockwave are old friends and Perceptor tries to get that friendship back. That would be a good way to tie in the Earth plot with the Cybertron plot. We could even... Well, episode 4 is a bit early to do that. Episode 8, that would be good. Reveal that Perceptor and Shockwave were old friends, and Perceptor tries to get that friendship back. This could be like a very emotional episode, one of those episodes that people talk about a lot on Tumblr. Ties. It's sort of a crossover. Sort of a crossover from Earth and Cybertron plot lines. And the fact that we have two characters interacting. I suppose Perceptor would have to somehow... Maybe this episode 4 is something like sets up Space Bridge stuff. And then episode 8 will have Perceptor like finally have the Space Bridge operational and he goes to Cybertron to try to contact Shockwave. Yeah, because they're a resistance cell. And surely they're on about resistance cells on Cybertron. The main resistance cell on Earth, or headquarters on Earth, would want to be able to funnel stuff between them and the Cybertronian one. So maybe that's why they're trying to set up a space bridge. It wants to make contact with resistance on Cybertron. And then this one, Perceptor completes the space bridge and arrives and tries to get Shockwave to be his friend again. This fails and Perceptor flees back to Earth. I like the way this show sounds. Thank you. Overlord won't be God. Shockwave, that's illogical. A fun thing to explore in an episode is the relationship between the Autobots and Decepticons before the war. They are the same race, meaning they probably met a lot. Some of them may have been friends, yeah. Thundercracker leaves the Decepticons and Skywarp joins G.I. Joe like IDW. I want G.I. Joe to just be like a throwaway, like one episode, maybe in the teens? In the teens or the 20s? An episode where they meet G.I. Joe, this version of G.I. Joe. Also, would Scorponok better suit Overlord's Low, since Scorponok is a legitimate opportunist, while Overlord just wants to make a trans exhaust? Well, that's, you're talking about IDW. This is a new interpretation of the character. An episode could be where Jazz learns more about the culture. One such culture could be the concept of music like jazz. That could happen in episode 7. It'd be good if the audience found out about Jazz before the Autobots do. That Jazz is the traitor? I think it would be best if they find out at the same time. How about something similar to the Warren in IDW? That's an idea. Honey, I Shrunk the Autobots. We need to make Overlord and Shockwave small parts that somehow form respect while they're in police, but slowly becoming friends. Shockwave still loyal to Megatron episode 12. Wait, no, Grimlock and Shrunk. Straxus. Soundwave should be the ambassador, a council member. Ah, that's a good idea. Soundwave is the Galactic Council ambassador, and since he's a communications officer, you know, he has a look. You can stretch the definition of communications officer to say he has experience with communicating with people. Oh yeah, we need to have. I'm not sure where to stick it, but we need to do a little something about Soundwave with the Galactic Council. Could Prowl meet a version of Chief Burns from Rescue Bots and learn how to be less of a jerk? We haven't established that Prowl's a jerk. Episode 10 should have the Combaticons on a rampage. Episode 5 for Jazz find out, reveal the shield. Maybe, but we don't, like, there's nothing here that's so reveal the shieldy here. Oh, when Jazz is found out. I'm sorry. That's a good idea. Reveal the shield for when he's found out. Would there be an Autobot council member or ambassador? No, because the Autobots would be... The council would recognize the Decepticons as the legitimate government over Cybertron. And the Autobots don't... The Autobots barely exist. So I think they would have other... Now, could there be like a lobbyist group? We could have... That would be the plot where we have Soundwave involved. A group of Autobots... Ooh... I have a good idea. Do we want to do that so early as episode 5? Episode 9 or 10, maybe. Episode 9 or 10. Because, you know, we're slowly reaching the point where we need to have another major multi-parter. We should have a finale multi-parter. Maybe somewhere between the 20s and 30s we'll have a big multi-parter. And then another multi-parter, maybe around 17. Episode 13, maybe? 11, 12? Let's do 11, and we can move it if we need to. But a group of Autobots, and this could be our opportunity to use characters we haven't used yet, go to the Galactic Council to lobby for the Autobot cause and also reveal the Decepticon activities on Earth. Soundwave, the Decepticon ambassador to the Galactic Council, discovers this and hunts these Autobots down on the Galactic Council capital world in a cat and mouse type story, all while Soundwave is trying to keep up appearances as a peaceful and legitimate politician, and, you know, not as a war criminal. And then it would end with Soundwave killing the Autobots, possibly brutally. And maybe like he does something bad to hide the bodies, throws them in acid or something, and hides the bodies in a violent yet clean manner. Characterize Soundwave as a sort of brutal and a brutal but brilliant murderer who seems completely detached of emotion despite being so violent. I think that sounds like a cool episode. I would watch that. Let me know what you guys think if you tweet that or anything, but I think that sounds good. Gives us the Hasbro when Cyberverse ends. Will Shockwave be a villain? Episode 12 could have the Council inspect Cybertron, with Shockwave needing Overlords to charm and start to build a small bond between Overlord. I don't think it's in the nature of this series to have Shockwave and Overlord form a bond. They need to, if anything, they'll become more hostile as time goes on. Now it's Strax as a council. Well, this gives us a good opportunity to use Soundwave. What if Rodimus, who's totally unqualified, represents the Autobots on the council? Again, we wouldn't have the Autobots on the council. I think we have an outlier group of... Yes, we should do a Wreckers little spotlight episode at some point. Also, is this like the G1 type universe where the Autobots and Decepticons form the cast imposed on Cybertronia? That's for us to decide. Wait, how did they even Cybertronia? Bridging the Gap could be a working plot title for episode 4. Ah, I like that. Bridging the Gap. Or actually, that might work better for the one with Shockwave, because not only are they bridging the gap between worlds, Perceptor is trying to bridge the gap between his friendship with Shockwave. I think that might be better for episode 8. Bridging the Gap. So where Braun accidentally breaks Kelly's car and needs to replace... See, that's a bit more than just a cameo. If it needs to replace it but isn't able to go back to base because of it. More of a comedy episode. Yeah, I can see something like that. That could be an episode 5 thing, frankly. Episode where Braun or someone else accidentally breaks a human's car and needs to replace it while keeping his cover, and feels duty bound to not return to base until he can fix it. Comedy episode. That's good for episode 5. Gassy finds out Jazz's secret but doesn't tell the Autobots because of Jazz's inner struggle. Again, I don't want to... We want... The Jazz thing is... At this stage, the only thing that will... At this stage, I don't want you to have any idea that there's even a spy to begin with. The only thing we're planning here is, like, you know, throwaway lines like, oh, I'm getting tired of this war from Jazz or something like that, where if you rewatch it, you're like, oh, I see that. But if you're actually watching it for the first time, you don't see it. The reveal that there is a spy should be a major reveal. Because you need to, like, get time to, like... The viewer will not know that there is a spy. They'll get time to get to know these Autobots and enjoy them, and then told later on by the Decepticons at the same time as the Autobots that there is a spy. And then that makes the audience go, who's the spy? And then they'll be rewatching it for hints, but not really be able to find anything until the ultimate reveal. Rodimus can be again, Autobots aren't on the council. Soundwave as a tired dude on the council, so tired of Shockwave and Overlord. Alright, well... Shockwave and Overlord wouldn't really have much to do with the Council. Multiple parts for episode 45. Yeah, we had the whole finale to deal with. What's the multi-part with Cliffjumper and Treadshot? Temporary swap places. That doesn't sound like multi-parter worthy, necessarily. Oh, we did mention we want to do a Shattered Glass episode. Do we want to do that so early? I think we could stick a G.I. Joe in a... I know what we need to have in here. We need to have a flashback episode, like talking about Megatron and the origin of the war. Maybe episode 15? I'm okay with having like the Megatron flashback episodes like being like episodes more than just one episode, but separated. Like there's an episode where it's a flashback of like early Megatron, and then a few episodes go by, and then another episode flashback of Megatron like getting to like dislike society. A bunch of episodes go by, and then a flashback episode of Megatron starting the rebellion, something like that. Back to Megatron's early life is... And do we want to start the war off sort of like a similar, corrupt society, and he sees society's corrupt? Like maybe a very simple story like when he's first, created that deals with, like maybe he befriends a character, like a minor character who then gets like killed off by like maybe Sentinel Prime for being like a lower class person or something like that. Obviously it needs to be more fleshed out than that, but something like that. Terracons are going on a rampage and incompetent here. Soundwave brutally murders the spies, the lobbyists. What if the season end with the Autobots revealing themselves to humans? That's an idea. And look at it this way. We need to clarify what we mean by season here. I'm thinking that like, this is the whole series, but like you can divide these things into maybe like one of these multi-parters is the reveal. Either episode 17, not episode 17 itself, but like somewhere in this region, or somewhere in this region, like between the, yeah, either like this late 20s, early 30s. Or late 10s, early 20s, we can have the reveal for humanity. Shattered Glass in 40 to 45, I kind of want this to be like our home stretch to the conclusion. Like we need to figure out what our big finale is. But I think our Shattered Glass might do well somewhere over here. Ugh, don't know what that was. Maybe we could have a flashback episode. Still be a gladiator? That's an idea. We have Alpha Trion and Megatron's origin being the sort of reason he became so evil, making you rethink Alpha Trion. How would that do that? Shockwave was cloning himself to System Nitro, Zeus, and Galactic Man clone. Seacons are the guardians of Cybertron. The Decepticons live in poverty, and then he creates over... So we're saying that the Decepticons exist before Megatron, and then Megatron takes over. So like Hitler didn't create the Nazis, he took over the Nazis. Why don't we have a close friends to him die, be Kiloton and Terminus? Oh, we could have Terminus, that's a good idea. Flashback to Megatron's early life. He befriends... maybe we can have him be a fellow minor named Terminus. Terminus dies... or Terminus tells Megatron of the injustice on Cybertron and the oppressive government. At some point, Terminus is killed, maybe by Sentinel Prime, for being a prominent anti-government voice. This sets in horror and being pegged as an ally to Terminus. Megatron flees the mines and eventually discovers a gladiator ring run by a group of Cybertronians known as the Decepticons. They are called this as why were they called the Decepticons? Because they feel like they were deceived by society? Because as it stands right now, these Decepticons sound more like they're separating from society and not necessarily reformists. So like the old IDW "you are being deceived" thing doesn't really work that much here. They feel that they have been deceived by society and the propaganda and the pro-government propaganda proliferated by it. What if Autobot X is built, but instead of being a Frankenstein, becomes an actual recurring character, wanting to know why he's so different? That's an idea. Having episode 16 is the end of season 1. Yeah. 16 to 17. We can do a 2 or 3 part multi-parter thing here. We look at Smoke with Decepticons, who the audience simply. That's a good idea. Like sort of a scavengers type situation. Just where do we want to stick that? Kind of weird to stick that right after the episode where Soundwave brutally murders someone. Episode 13 focuses on a group of Decepticons in space, maybe space or Cybertron. Let's just say a group of Decepticons that are written to be sympathized with by the audience. Drop some hints about how things were before the war to set up questions to be answered with episode 15. You know, sort of like, oh, they talk about how bad things were before the war. How bad were things? And then you have another episode, and then the next episode, bam, this is how bad it was. The longest would be, Blaster. That would be a good idea. That it's Blaster. Group of Autobots. Blaster? That would be a fair idea. Would give a good chance for Blaster to release his like cassette tapes, and then Sound releases his, so we can introduce those guys. Wait, man, have the ending set up potential spin-offs like Wreckers, Lost Light, DJD, and say how did it. I don't know if you were there at the beginning of the stream, but at the beginning of the stream I said this show, we're basically focusing on one cartoon, and then if the stream does well, and that's really the question, if this stream does well, then we'll do more streams, like making a sequel, like basically building a trilogy, Unicron trilogy style of these shows, and then we'll go into spin-offs and stuff like that, like sort of DC animated universe style. But right now, we don't even know how well everything is going to go with this season, or with this stream, I should say. So we're just focusing on trying to tell a good story right now. We don't need to have so many things left open. And like, oh, we can have this open for another... We don't need to do that right now. We need to have a solid foundation and not, MCU this. What if Optimus is looking for someone, not be a hot rod to lead the Autobots after he dies? We need something for Optimus here. That's true, we do need something for Optimus here. And if we do, like, kill off Optimus towards the end, this could be a good setup. Episode 16, maybe. Focuses on Optimus Prime, looking back at the current Autobot situation and realizing he needs a successor before he dies. This episode can give more backstory to the Primes and Optimus's lineage and about the matrix of leadership. Have a different name for the Decepticons at first, and then they get a reputation with other species for being deceiving. I'm not so sure about that. Smokescreen gets killed by Barricade and Prowl feels bad. I have no combiners until season 2. We have Megatron claim to fame be that he was the first gladiator to spare a life despite the crowds yelling at him to kill the other gladiator, and that gladiator would be Lugnut. I'm not so sure about that. Have an episode dedicated to unscrew characters where few of them die, get caught, mental illnesses, torture, and just straight up messes up. We'll make an episode about Red Alert finding out he has a form of Cybertron and schizophrenia, cause for alarm. Be a serious episode. Maybe. Episode 14 would be about Cassie with Optimus somehow stuck in a life or death situation, testing the limits on Optimus' honor and beliefs, but getting saved by Cassie at the end and showing his faith in humans. That's fair. Focuses on Cassie and Optimus Prime. Cassie somehow saves Prime, helping Prime to have faith in humans. That's a good idea, the dreads, because keep in mind in all this, we haven't really focused on the Decepticons going after the Autobots that much. Episode 9, we can bring in, could be one where Decepticons bring in the dreads, sport hunter Decepticons to track, oh, they know where the Ark is, to hunt the Autobots. Maybe at some point the dreads infiltrate the Ark and then it's almost like a horror episode where like they rip out the power and then like you're an Autobot just kind of walking along and then a dread pops out of nowhere. Horror-esque episode where the dreads infiltrate the Ark and cut the power. Maybe have one or two casualties. The dreads are ultimately defeated. Episode where Giant Thundering arrives and army of Scourge clones and he's a hero Unicron that wants to destroy the Matrix. We need to set up Unicron. if we're going with that, if we're going down that route. Episode with the villain being Dead End and Megatron, but due to Optimus being high, the range prowess has something to do with called Red Badge of Courage, about an auto trooper and his mates on the battlefield. Our main auto trooper, Tailgate, eventually abandons his unit and runs away. I like that. In fact, that could be episode 10. Red Badge of Courage. About an auto trooper and his mates on the battlefield. Takes place during the war. Main auto trooper is Tailgate, who eventually abandons his unit and runs away. I'm guessing not all the Autobots wanted to go to Earth. In one episode, we can focus on the ones who decide to stay on their home on Cybertron and what life is like for them. Yeah, we could do something like that. Well, I also find Drift in Japan and not trust him, but find out he dislikes what the Decepticons have become and wants to help the Autobots. I think that could be a rival between Drift and Cyclonus. That's an idea. Blackout gets killed by Silverbolt, and Spike sees the battle, and that's how he finds out Transformers. Not sure why Blackout and Silverbolt. Episode 14 could be Have a Little Faith. Focus on Have a Little Faith. Which references Ada. Yeah. Have a Little Faith. I like that. Alan fights Onslaught and loses an eye. Wait, but what about if he spared a life? It would set him apart from the other gladiators and put a spotlight on him. Why not give Lugnut a compelling reason to be a fanatic? Well, we don't need Lugnut in this series. And Megatron is the type of person that takes the power. So I think he would be laughed out of the Decepticons if he left a gladiator alive. What if we had an episode where Perceptor is studying various theories and discovers the multiverse? That could be something for later. Now you think it might not make Steve seem evil, but maybe we could have that view as more evil as the war progresses. Episode 10 could be where we introduce Energon as a fuel source since the Dreads took out the power and have it repaired if the Decepticons arrive to exterminate them. Sure. Or that would be in episode 9, you mean. Nemesis Prime should be a dark persona of Optimus he keeps in the back of his head. Also, how are we going to introduce the... I don't know if we necessarily will introduce the Insecticons and Dinobots. It really depends if we actually have any significant plans for them, and right now we have a lot on our plate. Have an episode where the Decepticons combine. And again, we don't really want to deal with combiners so early. Gonna use the bathroom real quick. Alright, what we need to think about is episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We need a plot for episode 12. And then, what is the first multi-parter gonna be? We need what is episode 12 about, and then the first multi-parter should change the status quo. How are we gonna change the status quo? Not so much that we're already towards the ending, but shake things up. How are we gonna shake things up in this multi-parter? And then what happens in episode 12 before the multi-parter? Be right back. Okay. Multi-parter where the spy starts taking action and begins to sabotage the Autobots. That's fair. Episode where the Autobots need Cybertronium, so they plan to steal some of the Decepticons. I don't think we want to bring in Cybertronium. Also, the Cybertron-based Decepticons hook up with Earth-based Decepticons. Well, they've been hooking up the entire time, Or at least, the Decepticons brought enough forces they needed. There isn't really much of a... It's really the Autobots trying to contact Cybertron. Episode 12, Cassie and Spike go with Hot Rod on a recon mission. Hot Rod gets captured and Cassie and Spike have to save him. So Optimus would be Jazz-centric episode, slowly revealing bits of Jazz's guilt without Prime's knowing. Well, again, the audience doesn't know. We don't want to even... Besides, like, 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, we don't want to even hint that there is a spy, let alone that Jazz is a spy. So, we can't reveal anything about Jazz at this stage yet. Multi-part we can introduce threats such as Unicron. Unicron should not be introduced in the episode 17, 18, maybe 19. That's way, 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 way too early. But it shouldn't be Unicron's main appearance. We say that for the end. If he appears, it should be at the end. I don't think it should be maybe it's like, when did Transformers Armada first hint at Unicron with that black hole thing when the kids went into digital space? That was like episode, what, 30, 40? Episode 12 should just be a random episode with the city populace casting the Autobot visit is under control by the Decepticon mind wipe. Again, the Decepticons don't want to interact with the humans that much. Thinking of G1's Ultimate Doom where the cons nearly conquer Earth. We don't want the Decepticons to be public on Earth. That's the whole point of the Galactic Council side plot. The first multiplier could be the government find out what the Transformers eventually agree to keep their secrets, and the Autobots. Maybe a cameo friend. That might be an idea. Council's raised suspicion on the Decepticons. So the multi-parter should include elements from all of our side plots so far. Which, so far, our side plots is Overlord seeking to pull strings against the Autobots and Decepticons to take control. It should include something about that side plot. Maybe Optimus's. That might be a later thing. It should focus on the Decepticons trying to keep... Because think of how Transformers Animated did multi-parters. And when Animated did a multi-parter, it advanced the main story with all the different side plots going on. So maybe we should try to do something like that. Decepticons trying to keep the Earth operations a secret from the GC. It should obviously have to do with Decepticons trying to wipe out the Autobot resistance on Earth. It should deal with Autobot resistance on Earth communicating contact with resistance on Cybertron via the space bridge. Yeah, and maybe this multi-parter is where we reveal this. Yeah, this would be a great multi-parter to reveal that there is a spy. Then, in between this multi-parter and eventually the next multi-parter, so throughout most of the 20s is where we have the mistrust. And then in this multi-parter we can reveal it's Jazz. But our first multi-parter should include a little bit at least of all of these, with one of these plot lines really being pushed forward. Battles in disguise, that's an idea. It ends with most cons still stuck on Earth due to the human populace. So we see a day in the life of Cassie. Although I don't think maybe. It says, but you said this said change the status quo and the humans being introduced to the Cybertronians. Oh, we're talking about the multi-parter? Maybe. What if Jazz finds out something about Overlord's true goals and tells both the Autobots and the Decepticons? Maybe, but I'm not sure how he would find that out. Told about Cassie Optimus trying to stop some pranks on CBA Rumble and Frenzy. They would do a sound wave on the Galactic Council homeworld. That's an idea. But episode 12, I really want to get episode 12 done before we go to the multi-parter. I haven't seen like one that... I don't think a Cassie-focused episode, like solely on Cassie. Let's see, it comes after public... Well, it does come after public relations. Public relations is like one of the darkest episodes we'll have. You know what, Starscream's an interesting character we haven't really dealt with. Maybe episode 12 could be a bit Starscream focused. Anyone have any good Starscream stories? It's not just Starscream betraying Megatron, because that's been done 1,000 times. Okay, we have Thundercracker really questioning if this is the cause, or the word. Well, yeah. What would make him start to think that, though? The war's over. They haven't really done anything, or he isn't aware of really doing anything bad. Oh, maybe the dreads. Maybe he thought, like, bringing in the dreads was a little much. You know, essentially manhunters. Episode focusing on Thundercracker covers the bushfires in Australia. Keep in mind that this is being aired in 2021 to 2022. Dropkick should hate Bumblebee for killing Shadowland for Gizmo. Focus on Thundercracker questioning the morality of the war in the aftermath of using the dreads. We need a little bit more here. At the same time, we see Scream reminisce. Oh, that's terribly misspelled. Reminisce about his past and why he pledged loyalty to Megatron. Which would be what? His own selfish interest? His own selfish interest. Thundercracker seeks consultation with Starscream, but is left even more. I've seen you post the Dion thing, Cybersight. I've said nothing because I think it's a bad idea, but is left even more conflicted. There's gonna be an experiment by Shockwave, that's true. He could have learned, because Shockwave's turned his province into a Holocaust camp. The dreads could be sent from Shockwave. Created by Shockwave in his Holocaust camp of a province to hunt Thundercracker and learning about Shockwave's policies in his province. Okay. So, episode 17, 18, maybe 19 has to include these elements. This is our first big multi-parter. I will say it ends, or maybe not ends, but reveals that there is a Decepticon spy in the Autobot ranks. Okay, what would be the main plot of this multi-parter? You said that humans... One of you said that humans learn about the Transformers, but I don't see how that really ties into the things we need to connect to. Okay, you guys keep talking about the stuff that we've just finished up and give me ideas for episode, like throwaway episodes when we're on the multi-part. Let's focus. This is where we really need to see Overlord start pulling the strings, because he hasn't really done much. He could learn about the space bridge that's being used to funnel things between the two resistance groups, or two planets with resistance on them. And how does he use that to his advantage? Cybertron-based Autobots arrive on Earth. They tell the Earth-based Autobots everything. Everything what? The Earth-based Autobots already know everything. The Earth-based ones are the high command, and they're giving orders to the Autobots on Cybertron. 17 sets up the Autobot spy idea with Meg's planning another siege, as Cassie worries about her foster parents finding out about the Autobots. We can have the Decepticons taunt Optimus with there being a mole that he doesn't believe it, then he tells someone he trusts and rumor goes around the bots. The first multiplayer will be Perceptor locks into the Council's homeworld. So we're trying the whole thing that happened in public relations again. And Optimus sends a squad including Jazz to try to get the Council's attention. Starscream loves to dance in private. Jazz then gives the cons this information. Reread my last two messages. I don't see your last two messages. Megatron and the Decepticons' loyalties are split in two, and the Autobots regroup, and they begin to wonder how they lost such a bad way when someone said there must be a traitor. Two parties of Decepticons are surrounded by HQ. Autobots scatter across the Earth, and the Decepticons hunt them down. Overlord kills Megatron and Decepticons. Bad idea. Sentinel Prime should have met Orion Pax. Look, that doesn't have anything to do with this two-parter. What was that one? This one. This one starts to look like an idea. I'm just worried about how much of that just being a repeat of... Like, public relations, it didn't work. The Autobots go to the Galactic Council world, and they fail. And then those two parters, they do it again. It's like having two Death Stars. The cons start taking down top Autobot leaders on Cybertron. It's also an idea. Well, Overlord, that's a... Okay, well, that connects Overlord with some of this stuff going on. But there were two Death Stars, exactly, and it sucked. So these are good ideas. How do we tie these together? Overlord seeking to gain Overlord seeks to wipe out the Autobots so he can gain the prestige of being the ones to have finally crushed the Autobots and give him a position to take over Megatron's position, all while working with Starscream and promising his own role. Starscream's here with the Decepticons on Earth, meaning he doesn't have his own province. He could be salty about that after all the other generals got higher positions after the war. Overlord seeks to strengthen his position and take control of the Decepticons by wiping out both Autobots and and Megatron. His forces begin to wipe out top Autobot resistance leaders on Cybertron, which makes Optimus Prime want to become more proactive rather than reactive. Overlord makes contact with Starscream and convinces him to join him by promising him his own province if Overlord is in charge. And Starscream could tell Overlord that there is a spy, because really Overlord doesn't know that there's a spy. Really, it's only Megatron and the Nemesis crew that really knows about the spy within the Autobots. Starscream tells Overlord about the spy in the Autobot ranks. Let's see what you guys got. Just showing, changing, knowing what he knows. He doesn't know anything, but he will know after this. Like, towards the end is when the reveal would happen. And then we will deal after the two-parter how his relationship changes with the characters. If anybody does stop motion, collaborative attempts to grab power, but that fails and he gets marooned on Earth while having Megs return to Cybertron. That's something we could work with. Overlord sends a secret communication to Starscream that could be started. Yep. Lasting consequences. Much different than these kinds of stories with more serious tone and darker minds. Stick bang pow. Overlord could send coordinates to both Autobots and Decepticons in regards to council members traveling near Earth via cloaked ship. The Autobots try to get their ship running again. Well, their ship can run. Their ship's just fine. Their ship's in perfect condition. But the Galactic Council member might be a good idea. Sabotage at the end. Comes barricade with smokescreen's gun. Quiver discovers beast modes. We don't really want to deal with beast modes just yet. You know, it could be any number of. It could be Ultra Magnus. It could be Xeron. Giving the start to the 13 Prime. Let's start getting victory. Overlord start getting victory from the information Jazz provided him. Why would Jazz provide it to Overlord, though? The problem with that one is Jazz wouldn't give that to... Jazz, as far as we know, is making contact with the Nemesis people, with Megatron directly. Maybe he gives that information to Starscream? No. Yeah, that wouldn't really work that well. Reactive. Overlord makes contact with Starscream and convinces him to join in front of his own throne. Starscream's Overlord with the spy in the Autobot ranks. This could end with Overlord being marooned on Earth or dying. Now this council member thing could work. Overlord decides, and this is where we can bring in the council thing, because now Overlord knows there's a spy. Overlord's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Tell the spy that there's a galactic council person coming. Overlord decides to tell Starscream to tell the spy. Well, no, Jazz wouldn't want to to tell them about the operations on Earth. Wouldn't Jazz be found out by the Autobots at that point? That's the point. This is where he gets revealed. But it would be the Autobots are shocked, and Overlord reveals that there was a yeah, that's actually, yeah, if we don't want them to know it's Jazz. Jazz is the one who tells them to go there where it's the ambush. Why are they staying on Earth if the Decepticons know where they are? Why are they staying on Earth if the Decepticons know where they are? Because they kind of have the advantage on Earth. The Decepticons can't make their operations on Earth too public. So Earth is probably the best place for them to be at this point in time. Overlord kills Megatron, comes back as Galvatron, have Screamer link up Jazz and Overlord. Galvatron's cool. Overlord sends a message directly to the Autobots, informing there's a mole, but not knowing exactly one, kind of distrust among the Autobots. No, Overlord is too compelling to die this early. Is Soundwave under arrest? Nothing's wrong with Soundwave. Someone could be a cloak ship, could be Halley's Comet. Could have Onslaught be slowly built up over time. The ship, all these cloaks gone. The ship was by 75 years. Found with the auto. Combined mercenaries. Overlord likes to be arrogant, tries to kill Prime into the shop. Blah 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 blah. The question is, how do we set this up where Jazz isn't the one that gives them the information to the ambush, but yet Overlord will need to tell the Autobots that there was a spy? Maybe it's best to throw out the Galactic Council thing in this multi-parter. Where I was going to go with this was after the attacks, Optimus becomes more proactive rather than reactive. The spy in the Autobot ranks. We don't do the Galactic Council thing. Meanwhile, Optimus decides to take the fight to Cybertron and goes to Cybertron via the space bridge with his Autobots, including Jazz. And in secret, Jazz reports the location of the Autobots as they arrive on Cybertron, but is shocked when the voice on the other end of his communicator is Overlord, who he didn't expect. Overlord attacks the Autobots and reveals that a spy within their ranks revealed their location. They also make the connection that the spy was the reason the Decepticons found them on Earth in the first place. Actually, because we don't want people to know it's Jazz, we won't have the scene where Jazz reports that it's Overlord. We can do that in the later multi-parter, where it flashes back to how he's like shocked that it was Overlord. Overlord attacks the Autobots and reveals that there's a spy. Oh, and we would have to. Starscream tells. We can have the scenes say like Starscream says he has something to tell Overlord to help him take out Optimus Prime, and so the audience doesn't see that reveal is that there is a spy until the actual spy reveal. First place. big battle with Overlord, where many Autobots die. Many Autobots die. Meanwhile, Starscream is set against Megatron. And let's see. The Autobots are overpowered here. Starscream's coup against Megatron is... Let's see. So the dreads of the DAG, that's a terrible idea. I like the Cybertron idea much better. This has been great, thank you. We can show a shadowy figure instead of Jazz. Again, we don't even want the audience to know there is a spy. So a shadowy figure doesn't really help. And we want Overlord revealing it to be a big... We want it to be the bomb dropping on the audience. Now, how does this battle end? And again, besides the reveal of the spy and pretty much the crushing of the resistance on Cybertron, this doesn't change up the status quo that too much. If, say, Overlord's defeated, Starscream's defeated, the Autobots return back to Cybertron, back to the Ark on Earth. We still have things on Earth that we want to wrap up before we leave Earth. So we can postpone leaving Earth until the next multi-parter. So maybe we do have Starscream win against Megatron. Oh, have the Ark destroyed? The Ark isn't in the... Like, the fighting takes place on the Nemesis. Like, on the Nemesis, Starscream versus Megatron. And on Cybertron. And they went there by Space Bridge. Like... Sort of like Ground Bridge, Transformers Prime style. So the Ark's still on Earth during this. That they can just bridge back. Overlord defeated. As he's retreating, he can say there's a spy. I think it's best for him to say that like at a moment of overpowering the Autobots, so it like makes the situation even more desperate. And it's still a significant if he's running away in cower and fear, but thematically and symbolically, that doesn't show how big of a deal that is, that he's running away and saying, "Oh yeah, there's a spy, BT dubs." So he should do that when he launches when he arrives out of nowhere. What would G.I. Joe do? G.I. Joe's not in this so far. So Shockwave trying to kill Overlord, or Shockwave trying to kill Overlord. That wouldn't be in Shockwave's character. Have Jazz put a bomb in the ship's core. Why? If he's... that doesn't make sense. He's already got stuff going on. Starscream meets Megs and makes him his lackey. How about this? Starscream is left on Earth and Megs is left on Cybertron. Why? Because you can throw out ideas, but you have to explain why this makes sense from a writing perspective and how this will... Overlord, as the villain, should be defeated, but that leaves us with a little bit more of the status quo needing to be shaken up because, Overlord didn't win, because of course he can't massacre all the Autobots. Starscream versus Megatron is the only real point besides the spy thing that we can change the status quo. So we need Starscream to beat Megatron and take command of the Decepticons. Now, is that killing Megatron, or is that defeating Megatron? And is it defeating Megatron as in having him on life support? Like, you know, taken out of the main story for a little bit as he gets repaired, or is it him lost in space, thrown out of Astro Train? I still function wanna-bet style. Screamer's left on Earth and Megs is on Cybertron because of that. Well, no, Megs on the Decepticons on Earth and Cybertron are like completely like. That's like saying, what if this general during World War II was in Germany instead of on the front lines with Russia? It doesn't really matter. They're still. So Megatron being on he rules Cybertron already, so he that doesn't change anything. At least dead people, so there'd be a lot of adjusting people do. That's an idea. Megatron can still retain a leadership role. Then the status quo doesn't change enough. Overlord had Optimus under his feet, gloating in front of the space bridge. Overlord the space bridge. Ah, because of the space bridge. That's cool. Battle between Optimus and Megatron and the Cybertron core. The planet is destroyed because, well, that has nothing to do with this plot so far. We have Optimus telling his crew to retreat, and they are being defeated. Overlord tells him. Also, there are some casualties. Oh yeah, we can have Overlord walk out of this one alive. I like that. Let's die. Optimus orders a retreat, and Overlord tells him that there's no place to hide, Prime. There's a spy in your midst. Puts Meg in a coma and discards him in space. That's true, we could have Megatron exploring space a little bit. Have the Earth-based cons lose contact with the Cybertron-based cons. Why? Why would they lose contact? Remember when Skywarp immediately appeared Megatron in the cartoon's first episode? What if Skywarp can still live? Oh yeah, and really, the Autobots leave defeated. Starscream defeats Megatron. Overlord's still alive. Overlord's coup wins. Wins this. Sure, he didn't defeat Prime, but he did get on top. So he has Megatron and defeats Megatron, discarding his heavily wounded body into space. Okay, we've got ourselves our two-parter. Or multi-parter. Maybe 17, 18, and 19? Overlord seeks to strengthen his position and take control of the Decepticons by wiping out both Optimus Prime and Megatron. His forces begin to wipe out top Autobot resistance leaders on Cybertron, which makes Optimus Prime want to become more proactive than reactive. Overlord makes contact with Starscream and convinces him to join him by promising him his own province if Overlord is in charge of the Decepticons. Starscream agrees and says he has something to tell Overlord to help him take out Optimus Prime. Meanwhile, Optimus decides to take the fight to Cybertron and goes there via space bridge with his Autobots, including Jazz. Overlord arrives where Prime is on Cybertron and fights the Autobots. There are many casualties. Starscream attacks Megatron. Megatron is defeated. Optimus orders a retreat, and Overlord tells him that there's no place to hide as there is a spy. In episode 19, Starscream takes control of the Nemesis, discards Megatron's body, heavily wounded body into space with the belief that he will soon die. The Autobots have moments of anger and paranoia as they deal with the knowledge that there is a spy. Overlord secures his position as leader of the Decepticons. Maybe we want to have Shockwave do something here, like Shockwave's like, you overthrew our commander, I will kill you type thing. Or do we want Shockwave to fall in line? Yeah, let's have a reaction from Soundwave on the GC Capital Planet. Let's have Shockwave falls in line, but is noticeably upset about the change in leadership. A lot of you guys are on things that like really haven't had enough time to make their way into the plot. Some of you are talking about Alpha Bravo for some reason. A lot of you are talking about Prowl and Barricade, which isn't a thing that we've done. Red Alert is something that we've kind of skipped over because we don't have enough time to do that. A lot of stuff about the core of Cybertron, which has nothing to do with anything. What about Soundwave? We have Soundwave, we have a reaction from him, you know, he's upset. Shockwave falls in line for now, but cloned himself as Nitro Zeus to overthrow... Why would he clone himself as Nitro Zeus and Galactic Man to overthrow Overlord? Why not do that himself? You know, you can't just do things without any sort of logic to them. Do we have a name we want to give this three-parter? I've sound search for... That's an idea. Do you have a name for this three-parter? Usurp. The usurp. The usurp. Is that how you use that word? Is that a noun? Verb. Yeah, you can't just say... Maybe the usurping? Confrontation? Confrontation sounds kind of bland. Namely, I'm pretty sure we have a good title after a bit to think about it. Since it's a confrontation of all the characters. I guess. Autobots fell before Overlord and Megatron fell. I like Darkfall. Darkfall Part 1. Darkfall Part 2. Darkfall Part 3. Okay. Now we have 20, 21, 22, 23. We have like 9-ish episodes to deal with the spy stuff. And then more time on Earth before the status quo gets significantly changed with another multi-parter in episode 29. Will Hot Rod become Rodimus? We don't even have Hot Rod in this series yet. Try to take control from Overlord, but Pharaoh's Overlord's... Well, let's just have... Alright, now these are our one-shot episodes before we get to the next multi-parter. This is where I want to introduce my little G.I. Joe episode. It's a one-shot episode where the Autobots come into contact with an elite group of U.S. soldiers known as G.I. Joe and work on taking out some threat sent to them by the Decepticons. What episode do you want to reveal Jazz? I want to reveal him in this multi-parter. Back on Earth. Yeah, there's some aftermath stuff to deal with. Basically, okay, we've figured out how this works. How will the Overlord regime deal with the operations on Earth? How will Starscream operate as the military commander on Earth? Because now, before, the leader of the Decepticons was the leader of the operations on Earth. But now, the leader of the operations on Earth has an officer, has a commander to report to. So how does Starscream and Overlord have... What are their policies on this hunt for Optimus Prime? And how do they deal with the Galactic Council situation? Does Overlord keep Soundwave as the Decepticons' representative or ambassador to the Galactic Council, or does he send someone different? In fact, we could have Overlord send someone different, and then Soundwave, relieved of his duties, can go off to try to find Megatron. Will Spike do something in the show? We haven't introduced Spike yet. 3 should be dedicated to Matt. I think 3 might be a little much, but we can have episode 22. Starscream leads the Decepticon on an attack, making Thundercracker slowly despise his brother, with another coup starting. I don't think we need to have another coup immediately after the last coup, but 22 could be Megatron. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Megatron landing on Junkion. What we could do to set up the ultimate ending, you know, the big baddies of the series, could have Megatron land on Quintessa, you know, encounter the Quintessons and have the Quintessons rebuild him. That could be an idea. Yes, this is where we would... Sometime at this point we would have the Wreckers focused episode. Episode focusing on the Wreckers and their escapades in space. Overlord doesn't trust Soundwave as he is loyal to... Yeah, let's have... Overlord replaces Soundwave as GC Ambassador. Soundwave decides to go out looking for Megatron. Who does Overlord replace Soundwave with? Well, we have Swerve try to come... We don't have Swerve in this cast. Thundercracker defects from the Decepticons and joins the Autobots. I do not want to have the DJD in this series. Who are we replacing Soundwave with as the Galactic Council ambassador? Would Megatron be loyal to the Quints, or would he be against him, or would the Quintessons like rebuild him, but also like change his mind and like reprogram him to serve them? Why would Overlord send Swindle? Explain your justification for Swindle. You'd be Overlord's yes man. Why? Sound Blaster as a that's funny. Any G2 characters? Skyquake. So, I can go with Skyquake. The thing is, with Skyquake, the thing is, you kind of want to have a major character being in such an important role, but we can make Skyquake a major character. Thundercracker and Starscream argue over the events and politicking the political instability of the Decepticons, and Thundercracker ultimately leaves and joins the Autobots. Go into Arch Force. I don't like that idea. Introduce other characters and a lot of them have died in Dark Fall. That's true. Yeah, what characters do we want to develop more? We shouldn't reprogram Megs because then he wouldn't be Megs. But that's the point. And have as the episode is a bunch of flashbacks on Megatron's rise to power. Oh, that's right. We need another Megatron flashback. Megatron flashback. Dealing with Gladiator Megatron as he rises through the ranks of the Decepticons. Ultimately, his ability to scheme and his nefarious personality leads him to overthrow the leader of the Decepticons, which might be Clench, mimicking Megatron origin, and takes command for himself. He begins to push a revolutionary stance in the Decepticons. Soundwave wouldn't find Megatron in Changing of the Guard, but we will have a later one, maybe 26 or 27, where Soundwave, while looking for Megatron, is attacked by Quintesson reprogrammed Megatron in space, as Megatron in space reveal that Megatron has been set loose by the Quintessons to hunt Cybertronians. Episode will include flashbacks of how Soundwave met Megatron and why he felt loyalty to him. Three hours? Oh, Jesus. What time is it? It's 1 a.m. Jesus Christ. I think Bridging the Gap's a good one. That's true. I think we have done a lot on this. It's 1 a.m. I should probably sleep. Whether or not, I don't know if I'll continue this stream or not. Like do another stream talking about this. But we'll see how that goes. But thank you all for coming out. Yeah, I don't know how to end streams. Consider supporting me on Patreon. The link to my Patreon is linked in the description. I know I haven't put out any more videos recently. That's because I really got messed up with my trip to Hokkaido. So I really fell out on my schedule there. But we'll be getting back to the content soon, hopefully. I believe tomorrow's my planned day to work on content again, although I was planning on waking up at a productive time because my sleep schedule's been messed up, but here I am at 1 a.m. Yeah, Patreon's in the description, Twitter's in the description, Discord's in the description. You get the idea. And yeah, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.